Hello, my name is Carina, and in this podcast, Break Fear, Find Freedom, I have conversations with people just like you who have broken their fear and found their freedom, whatever that may be. And shows you how to do the same. So sit back, relax, grab your coffee or your running shoes, whatever makes you happy, and let the fun begin. Oh, by the way, come take my hand and let's go. The door's opening now.
Today, we're speaking a bit about addiction and substance use and stigma of society, and how addiction becomes like a prison. So even once people have gone out, we've gone into rehab and come out, there's still that stigma, there's still that prison, there's still that big label over our heads. And well, we've got some an interesting people today to show us how we can change that, and we can change people one person at a time, as Dino always says. And hey, Dino, how are you today?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome, thank you. Let's speak to, we've got Brandon Foss and Kevin Hyer. So let's start with Kevin and say, Kevin, tell us a bit about who Kevin is and what's your story?
Oh my. Well, my story is one of finding a higher calling. No pun intended.
Bam, what a plug.
Pardon? What?
What a plug. That's perfect.
Yeah, touche. So yes, my name is Kevin Hyer. I'm an attorney by my background. I practiced labor and employment law into my late 30s. And when I was dangerously close to 40, as I like to put it, I made a mistake. That mistake was I tried meth. And 8 weeks later, I lost my job in a large law firm because of it. I was that addicted that quickly. And I got clean and sober and am now trying to figure out some purpose. And I had the good fortune to meet Dino and Brandon. And I'm just telling my story of basically finding my way back and realizing how fortunate I was from having had, the ability to get back on my feet fairly quickly, but seeing all the inadequacy out there in the system to help other people get their lives back together, because it's clear that insurance only covers until you leave rehab. And there's so much out there that people could benefit from that we just structurally don't have the means to provide, which is what the foundation has stepped up to do. But that's my story. My story was someone who had never done drugs. I made a mistake. I had an early midlife crisis and I paid for it. But I'm now giving something back.
I love that. Tell me about the fear you had regarding meth, because we know that meth, that's a known fact, right? You can see people just spiraling out of control once they take that first hit. How did you get out of that? How did you break that fear and actually decide, hey, it's time to get out of this? And
I was every single thing I had, and I saw it coming, and I kind of had a realization, whether you believe in a higher power, however you see it. We learn in recovery, it's, our own personal conception of a higher power. I just knew I was going to lose everything. I was going to lose my life, the people that cared about me, my freedom, my financial stability. I was going to lose everything. And I just finally realized it had to stop. And through the grace of my higher power and the support of friends and colleagues, I was able to put meth behind me for good.
Wow. That is very powerful, because a lot of people don't, especially with meth. That's really the devil, right? And it just gets hold of you and just, like crack and all of them. But I think meth is worse. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. They call it the devil's drug for a reason.
Yes. Thank you, Kevin. Let's just chat to Brandon. Hey, Brandon, what about you? What is your story, and who is Brandon? And how do you fit in this picture?
I'm Brandon Foss, and right now I'm the the Chief Executive Officer for the Hyer Calling Foundation. But aside from that, who am I? I'm somebody that loves to help. I'm passionate about recovery, about helping others, and always have been. I grew up in a Christian home that was very Christian, and there's a lot that I learned from that in a good way, but there's also the stigma of wanting to be this certain thing. And always measure up, that I always felt wanting, right? So that's a double-edged sword. And growing up and then getting my degrees, I have a degree in English and in philosophy, and then doing nothing with it, working at the bank for 12 years, literally starting in the mailroom. And then when I left the bank, I was a performance coach. So it was I was consulting for 120 banking centers and working with them as far as their sales and performance, and the teams that did that as well. So that's kind of my experience. But within that, I don't know if you've seen Dope Sick, the TV show about big pharma and how people get caught up in the injury piece of opioids. And I was a major part of that. Or I wasn't a major part of it, but it was a major part of my life rather. So that's my experience. I was injured, had tore the ACL, MCL, my meniscus folded in half inside my knee, and then just wound up on having 4 surgeries, being put on opioids and opioids and opioids. And before that, I didn't know what addiction was. Like, I helped people and my family and friends in any way I could, but I didn't know what this thing was. And then going to rehab, it just opened my eyes to this world where people are not supported or taken care of. And this stigma, like you talked about, it breaks my heart. Like, and that ever since being in rehab, and while I was in rehab, like, I just wanted to help other people, like, with their jobs, like what we do now, right? Like, that's my focus, is to get people ready for the workplace. And that's what I was doing in rehab, right? Like, helping people with their resumes, because I did a lot of that at the bank, a lot of frontline leadership schools and things. So it fit in. When meeting Kevin and Dino, it just fit perfectly. My focus has always been the individual, because when I started my career at the bank, it had nothing to do with who I was or what I wanted to do, really. It was all about what I was expected to do, right?
Yes.
But unless we find that passion within ourselves, I mean, you're on here talking about awesome things. I'm sure this is one of your passions. But if we're forced to do day in and day out the things that we don't care about, yeah, it really can be tragic, right? In our minds and psychologically. So from there, really, it's been about helping people that have struggled with substance use disorder, what I can do in that way, from individuals to groups. So I think, did I answer the question? I'm sorry, I get worked up about it.
That's all part of this, the fun of this podcast. We get sidetracked, so it's all good.
Yeah.
I love this synchronicity. So now, how did the three of you find each other? Okay, wait. Before I do that, let me ask Dino how he feels about this and how the three of you found each other. Because it's all synchronicity. It's a beautiful thing, right?
Do you realize that it's the first time that it's taken me more than 5 minutes to say something? I love it. What a good format. So I'm very excited because, we're bringing on new guests and we're talking. So this is really cool. How we met was basically what I refer to as perfect strangers. I mean, we didn't know each other. We came from different backgrounds. But I think that all of us, we didn't necessarily have to go back to work or have to go back to a specific environment. I mean, quite frankly, whether we liked it or not, we had a choice. Okay. Mm-hmm. But one of the cool things is like, for me personally, when I got out, just, not even having to go back to work, there's still a stigma. I mean, people look at you. I say it's like wearing a scarlet letter A morning, noon, and night. It's not that people want to see you fail. It's just that given the statistics of relapse, right? 90%, 85%, depending on the drug of choice, they all keep their distance because it's very, very difficult to be trusting and just embrace somebody and say, okay, let's pick up where we left off. There's a lot of pain that's been caused, throughout the addiction. There's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of things. So, you can't blame society for looking at somebody in recovery, right, on the road to recovery, as kind of leery, But what it does do for people less fortunate than the three of us is it kind of puts them at a disadvantage. I mean, imagine, people knowing that you went in. I mean, look at Kevin's story. Oh, this doesn't happen to lawyers. This happens to people that you find on Skid Row. Well, guess what? Here's a prominent lawyer that basically got marked for life. He came back. How is he going to go back to a law firm? Nobody wanted him, even though he was perfectly qualified. He has a degree. He has all the necessary qualifications to continue and be better than before. I mean, people wouldn't give him a shot. Same thing with Brandon. I mean, imagine Brandon going back into the very rigid banking environment, and all of a sudden people are whispering behind his back about, hey, this guy was in for addiction, I mean, it's just a terrible thing. And unless you really are a former addict, unless you're on the road to recovery, you may never understand what that feels like, even for us, even for me. And so we got together and basically said that, the best person in recovery is somebody with purpose. Now, I've freaked out a million times on your show, and we've talked about my rise and fall. And, just in real time, I talked about some fears that I recently had and how I overcame them by just basically facing them. But here's a perfect example how there's two other people right now on this podcast, similar stories, different backgrounds, and how we found each other was basically, I'll tell you when I met them is, I'm doing my campaign, my PR campaign for my book. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, hey, these guys have this Hyer Calling Foundation, and they read about you and they want to talk. So it didn't take long for us to get together, and we immediately hit it off because we had a like-minded vision. We each bring something to the table that's complementary. And we're all looking at the big picture of how we can serve others. And quite frankly, by serving others, we're actually, we're getting energized day after day. It's just really an amazing thing.
I love this. I want to go back to you, Kevin, as a lawyer, and of course, becoming a meth addict. What kind of fears did you have to face when you got out? And how did you face your friends and family, and how did they treat you? And I know we've spoken about that, but I need the story because,
Sure.
We speak about it in general, but we want that story.
They were surprised and disappointed in me. I think that was the feeling that I took. I don't want to speak for anyone, but I probably can summarize it that way. They didn't understand. Okay, they loved me. They supported me. I was very blessed. I didn't have people kicking me out of their lives, but they didn't understand. Okay, they didn't understand, how I had made the mistake to even try it, and then all the ripple effect that came from that. So it became a process of education and trying to explain to people that addiction is not just a choice. Okay. And that, when people do things here's maybe a better way to conceptualize it. There's Kevin, the addict, and then there's Kevin, the person. Kevin, the son, brother, the attorney, the friend, the neighbor, the uncle. And there's Kevin that hurt them, and the lies that come with addiction. I mean, it's tragic. There's no way anybody can say in my opinion, in any way with a straight face, addiction is absolutely tragic. Okay. But the good news, the message of hope, which is what I'm now trying to carry forward, is that addiction can be broken, and that our foundation here has the tools to help people do that and then live that meaningful, productive life that they were destined to live, and that they may have been living, like in my situation, until one mistake. That's what it was. My partner had left me. I was staring 40 in the face, as I say, and I made a mistake. That's what it was. And a lot of people, I think, have those same experiences. Yes. May have been a different circumstance that led to it. But it's just that we're all human. We make mistakes and we deserve second chances. Yes. So that's what I faced when I left, was how did this otherwise clean cut guy, and again, I had not been into drugs. I wasn't. I have many flaws, but it had not been addiction until then. but it became me. And that's what I dealt with. So what I pride myself today in is trying to break those stereotypes and say, and again, I use a little humor, but it's true. What's the stereotype of meth addiction? Tweaker in the trailer park. Be real, that's what it is.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
Well,
yes.
It is.
And stealing, and people going out and stealing and murdering and doing all sorts of things for the addiction. And also, we also know that, unfortunately, an addict is and that's experience, right? An addict is the best manipulator you'll ever find, right? So you have to try and overcome that stereotype, but that's true. Okay. I'm sure you'll attest to that, right?
Yeah.
What do you say?
You're not tales out of school. No, you're correct. It is. But what I take the most purpose in, I guess what I find the most rewarding, and then we can get Brandon and Dino's thoughts, is breaking that stereotype to say, yeah, a lawyer in a big city, and I was in a very large blue chip firm in Philadelphia, can have a problem with methamphetamine too. So it's not just in rural Missouri.
Yes, it's not just the homeless on the street, sleeping on the street.
Well, stereotypes are dangerous for this reason. If you do fit it, and obviously some people do, they internalize it. And they think, I'm just a junkie. I'm just an addict.
Yes.
And then if you don't fit it, you might not think you have a problem when you do.
Yes. So what we have to do, what we also have to do is change the self-perception. So, you know what, I'm not an addict, and I was an addict, right? But I'm not anymore because I'm okay. So Brendan, I'm going to go back to you because you have an interesting story. You've come from a Christian background, right?
Right.
And then you fell into big pharma, which a lot of people have got that issue, and we see it all the time. How did you deal with that fear? How did you deal with saying hey, I'm Christian, it's a set there, you've got a lot of stereotypes and a lot of you've got yourself in a box, right? I'm saying these things, and you can say I'm wrong or not, but how did you go back and say, hey, this is what happened to me, and I'm addicted to opioids, and now I have to admit and go into rehab? And how did you do that? What just changed?
Yeah, so that whole time period I was coming out of a Christian home. I didn't know if that's what I believed anymore. So that transition in my life philosophy and who I was as a person was all in question. So there was a lot of transition, a lot that was up in the air. I am so thankful for the goodness that came out of that Christian home, the love and support for others. Right. I don't know if I agree anymore, but I know that there's so much that's bigger than me, right? We call it a higher power in the room. Yes. So I may not be able to put a name on it or say, I know it looks exactly like this, but I know that, again, the four of us here talking about this is a higher power than myself. So the fear is, I was just riddled with fear growing up. I was the All-American kid, involved in sports, all-state everything, varsity everything. And so it didn't look like that. I had to put on that face, right? That I wasn't afraid. And as that transition into college and my knee surgeries, I was scared because I wound up with a nerve condition that may cause the loss of my right lower limb, like in the future, if I get a bad infection. So there's a lot of fear that came with that. But talking to people about, one day, my life was so miserable. I knew I had two sisters who I love more than anything. They were the world to me. I could never leave them. But being so miserable that I thought on a daily basis, I just don't want to be here anymore. That fear was what was the catalyst for me asking for help, because I like to say I've taken care of my sisters, but they've taken care of me just as much, because we've gone through so much together that I could never leave them. And so that at that point I said, I've got to do something. And then as there always is, that commercial about a rehab or whatever, and you call a phone number. And then fortunately I was blessed to get into a center that was very on the up and up and caring and loving and supported me through my recovery. And of course I worked at the bank, so I had awesome insurance. That didn't hurt either, right? Got that extra long stay. So that's kind of the fear piece of it. Coming out of rehab, I changed careers. Like I'm a master boat tech now. Like I work on boats. I help run a shop. Like I do that. And that's always been my passion, being on the water, in the water, on a boat, wherever. So I left the thing that I was supposed to do at the bank behind and just started doing the things that I love. And I guess that brings up a couple different things. We can probably talk about them later, but I think we see two different types of people that suffer from substance use disorder. Those that have been in it so long they don't have any tangible skills, they need help into the professional world, and those like Dino, Kevin, and myself that I was fortunate to be on a job site since I was 8 years old. I can do construction, electrical work. I can work on boats. I can fix cars. I can do whatever needs to be done and have the whole experience at the bank. So there's two separate classes. Not I wouldn't say classes of people, but two different types of people, and they need help differently, right? One's gaining skills, and one's just with the stigma of saying that scarlet letter, like Dino talked about. Like, how do we get these people back into the workforce and not just be scared every day like I was that somebody's going to find out like that I've been to rehab, because that's paralyzing. And we don't want that for anybody, like that freedom that you can feel. Because right now I'm owning it. I just talked about some of my stuff, right? And that's what we want from everybody. And people that hire somebody who's been to rehab, we want them to discuss it. You know, we want that open line of communication that makes everybody feel comfortable. And that helps somebody stay sober and clean. I'm going to be honest, like just being able to have that conversation is so supportive and what we all need in some way. So I'm sorry, I think I answered your question, but I'll turn it back over to you.
The interesting part is that you have to also look at the employer, because it takes a lot of courage for them to actually say, okay, I can accept this. I know you've been in rehab, but we know the statistics. And how do I know that you're not going to rob? I mean, again, it's the stereotypes, but they've got this at the back of their head saying, hey, how do I know you're not going to come in and kill me, or, you know, rob me or whatever? So it's that education piece where they need to understand that with people, everyone makes mistakes. And so are you doing also that education piece where you go to the employees and say, okay, this is this person, and we've got this, and that's why the person out of rehab needs the support, right?
Well, the education part is key, and a lot of the employers that are participating, you'll be surprised, a lot of them themselves are former addicts, or know of somebody in the family who suffered. Okay. So this is a lot bigger than people really want to know. I mean, you know, you look at AA and we use that word loosely, right? But there's millions of us all over the world. I mean, even like ask for Bill at the information desk at an airport, and somebody will come who's in AA to kind of talk you off a ledge, you know. And I didn't believe that, but I tried it once at an airport, not because I needed somebody, but I just wanted to see if it worked. And there's all these people that just show up.
I love
so
that.
There's tremendous support. What we're doing is we're tapping into something, right? Yeah, you got to educate employers, but there's a lot of them that have been through, they're road tested just like us, which is really important to remember. Unless you are an addict, I believe you can never understand really what they go through, the reasoning, the balancing act when you're addicted, when you're under the influence. For me, it was just crazy. I mean, it was a balancing act. Do I take this drug too much? It makes me crazy. Take this and you'll balance, but then you take this alcohol too much and then it was just a constant thing. And like I think Kevin and Brandon mentioned, is for me, it was different. I mean, here I am running an empire that I built from the ground up. I have hundreds of people that are just like following my every move. They all knew I had a problem, but it was just understood and accepted and put off to the side. So, I don't blame anybody, but at least for me, it was false reinforcement that, hey, you know what? I'm okay. I don't have a problem. And I think that's what happens. For the longest time, people in these types of positions, entrepreneur, business owner, legal profession, banking profession, they think like, okay, I'm so high up in stature, and if people know that I'm, using and they're still okay with it, then I don't have a problem. And I think that that's a huge part of the population that we don't talk about. And education is also with the employer. Education is also with the family, because nobody knows how to act when you get out. My family, do I drink in front of them or not? Do I talk about alcohol? Do I act different? And you finally have to say, hey, guys, it's cool. You know what I mean? I mean, don't stick it in my face. Don't offer it to me. But, I'm out of a bubble. I'm going to have to adjust. I'm going to have to handle things myself. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, when I was in rehab, and there were no classes, there were no rankings, there was no I'm better than you. I mean, it's an equal opportunity destroyer. But when I was in there, I'm listening to the stories of people in my group who are basically saying, when I get out, I need to start paying bills. I got to go back to work. I hate this job because it's got this person who we used to get high together. Or when I get out, I'm going to be in financial ruin because I'm going to have to fight court case after court case to try and get my children back who were taken away from me. These are real things that face people. And like Kevin said, I mean, when the insurance runs out, they spit you out. And it's like, okay, don't forget to go to a meeting. That may work. I'm not saying it doesn't work. But here's the thing. You don't know what you're supposed to do. The first thing that you want to do is be safe, just like what happened to me. Okay, I'm going to isolate myself in a house. I'm going to just cut off everybody I know, and I'm just going to be good. And you're terrified. You're like, I'm good, but I'm lonely. I'm bored. I have no purpose. All those things meant, as we've done this on the show so many times, working on your mental psyche, it's just crazy. Right. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to show people the next step, right? The way, the road forward. And, I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that to do this segment. Thank you, Carina, because, this is another side of things where it's just not me and you talking about, the same thing. Here's two other individuals that were chance meeting, and they have similar stories.
Yes. Now, I'd like to just put a span in the works, because a lot of times, and we know that, I'm sure you experienced that, what happens is that you're in a family, in a unit as the addict, like Dino was in his business and whatever. Brandon, you were in your Christian, and Kevin, you just, your family fell apart, right? Oh, okay. Sorry, Kevin, was it something I said?
He'll be back.
But what happens is that a lot of times the addict or the substance abuser, or whatever the right word is just like a token within the family, because the family is dysfunctional, right? And there has to be someone, and as society says, we can't show anybody what our family is really like. We have to show the world that we are perfect, right? And so what happens is that you get an addict within the family. So the addict comes out, and so then the whole family turns around and faces the addict. Now the addict becomes the focus of the attention, so they can take the attention away from the family. And then they take the addict out of the family because the addict's a bad person, and they put him into rehab, right? And then after rehab, they take the addict from rehab, put him back in that dysfunctional family, and then they wonder why he's relapsed. So what I'm asking you is, surely we should be treating the family as well, right? So you've got the addict, you take the addict out, you put him into rehab, and you've got this dysfunctional family. So we have to go back and treat the family so that the family can be healed as well. The addict can come back and he doesn't have to behave the same way. What are your thoughts about that, Brandon?
Sure. I think the family dynamic is, as you mentioned, is such a huge part of that. There's been a lot of studies, a lot of them around ACEs or childhood experiences or childhood trauma, and people that have more of that really have more of a leaning towards being somebody that struggles with substance use disorder. And I experienced a lot of those myself. I may be proof of the pudding, but I was the perfect kid. I had straight A's, didn't touch a drug until I was 20, right? And none of that, because that didn't make sense. And you didn't do that in my religion. And then as I transitioned away from that belief system to being more agnostic, I guess you would say, or not knowing, things became okay. But I have two sisters, and one of them was more prone to that lifestyle as the middle child at the time. She actually, I did illicit substances with her first, I believe. I think she was the first person, if I remember correctly. So that definitely transitioned from her to me as I was getting a divorce. And then as I was going through rehab and struggling with opioids in that way. And then the family dynamic is definitely, the family has to be educated, like you said. Mm-hmm. But in the end, we can talk about statistics all day long. They're so impersonal. They do tell a story, and they're important because they tell the propensity for things. Yes, but the truth is, whether it's with family, whether it's with employers, the love comes for the person, right? And for the individual and their desires. And that's the person that we want to support. And as long as we're trying, right, in some fashion, it's going to work out. I believe, right? Because just like a parent, there's no handbook for perfect parenting, right? Yeah. I don't think, but if you're trying, I think, and doing your best, I think that makes you a good parent. In the same way, if you're supporting somebody who has substance use disorder, you're trying, that's the important part, because we're going to all evolve as we, in our knowledge of how to support them. And that's going to change over time. So that stigma has always been there. I hope it goes away. That's what we're about.
Yes.
But our family unit and the people that we're close to, that's where we really can make a difference. And in our jobs and in the workforce as well, because that's where we spend all of our time. If you break it up, you're either at work or you're spending it with the people you love.
Yes.
So as we drive that change, for that stigma, the education, as Dino talked about and Kevin talked about, that's so important. But the effort that we have is driven by the people that we love in those relationships. So for me, that's at the heart of it.
Yes, yes.
Can I pull a Carina on you? Normally you'd ask this question. So Brandon, did you feel at all guilty at the end? Like you said, you were using with one of your sisters. Did you feel responsible for that in any way?
Yeah, that's a part of being an elder sibling and just who I am as a person. I always take responsibility and try and look out for others. So yeah, guilt and fear has been a huge part of my life. And there's been a transition in therapy and yoga and meditation, so many things to separate myself from that. And I think supporting those things, my family supported all of that. So yeah, transitioning out of that has been a struggle. But guilt does always want to come back, right? And it's the shame that's the problem. We all do things that we look back and say, man, I really wish I hadn't done that. That's guilt. But thinking that I'm the problem and I'm bad because of it is the shame. And that's where the danger really lies, I believe. And I can't, anytime somebody tells me they're ashamed or shameful or just acts that way, I want to do everything in my power to stop it or save them or whatever. Like, that's just my inclination, because that drives people towards, behavior that causes substance use.
Yes.
Is that shame, because nobody's bad. We're all who we're supposed to be. And I'm so lucky to know Kevin and Dino and now you, Carina, and I'm blessed because of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. While I was thinking about this morning, because I don't really prepare for these, as I'm sure you've gathered, I like just having conversations, right? I was thinking how addiction is the silencing of the soul. Because you have that pain and you have to silence it somehow, because your soul is saying, hey, what's happening here? And you go, I don't want to deal with this. So we'll go back to Kevin. you had your breakup, right, which was painful. How are you going to deal with it? It's the easiest thing, because a lot of us aren't so. I mean, we are self-aware, but self-awareness and self-love and doing all that internal work, it's hard work. Sometimes it's easier to just, and I'm just saying that, like I said, it's easier to try something new or to have a distraction. You know, a lot of people are addicted to their phones or to sugar. And you, you, Kevin, went like right over the deep end into meth. Wow. You chose the best of all, a lot, right?
I went from the kiddie end of the pool to the deep end. Yeah. I had, in all sincerity, I had probably tried edibles a couple of times in my life until I then tried meth. When it speaks to the soul, what I can say is my soul is now out there sharing the story. And I use the shameless plug, the Hyer Calling, to tell the story of what happened to me, but also my family. I have a brother who I've not seen in 12 years. And the last time my family saw him was at an intervention. So this is a topic that's also deeply, deeply personal to me. Okay. And I love my brother. It's my love for my brother and his wife, who also has an addiction issue, that makes me want to educate the public on this. Yeah. So it's not just for myself. Okay. It's for them, for other people who are mentally ill, because addiction is, strictly speaking, a form of mental illness. It's not what most adults associate with it. But, what my soul does from this is wanting to tell this story, to break those stereotypes. So not to be a broken record. Yes. But to also do another piece, and I want to draw an analogy. You referenced my breakup. I happen to be gay. There is a parallel, in my opinion, to coming out as gay or lesbian and coming out as having had an issue with addiction. A lot of why the gay rights movement has come so far has been sheer numbers, people sharing their stories, okay? The same thing I think is true, no, it's not a perfect analogy, to addiction. So when people come out there and say, hey, I am, by definition, a former addict, okay? It takes away that jarring association that used to exist with the term gay or lesbian, 20 years ago. So again, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think you can see what I'm illustrating. And sharing your stories and sharing, hey, I'm just like you. And there is, I sometimes use a little humor because you need that sometimes with this topic. Nice people from the suburbs, okay, can have an addiction issue too, okay? That look like you, sound like you, that you saw last weekend at church or at a synagogue or at a backyard barbecue or your kid's soccer game, And then when you have that familiarity, it's less scary. And when it's less scary, you can talk about it. Yes. And then when you can talk about it, you can break down the stigma and then get the help you need and then get back on with your life, which is our whole message here. It doesn't have to be the scary thing. What's a drug addict? Well, you're talking to them. Okay. But when I got the life back together, now let's get back on with the show.
Yes.
That's what my soul.
Yes, I love that because I've discovered here that there's so much there's so much polarities. Like, okay, I am a Democrat and you're a Republican, so we can't speak to each other. And we won't even go into this whole COVID thing that we won't even mention. I think what we need to do is realize, and someone did say to me, oh, I am like Pollyanna, like let's kumbaya and let's join together and start talking to each other and understanding that we're all the same at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether you're gay, straight, black, white, orange, pink. It doesn't matter. And if we actually sit down and speak to each other and realize how awesome we all are, right? Everyone's got something great, even so-called addicts. And a lot of times, so-called addicts are the most creative because they're trying to silence their soul because their soul is saying, hey, you're bigger than this, right? And that's what I love. So I love this education, the higher calling, if we can all come together and just help people, one person at a time, like Dino always says.
The next right, as they teach in recovery, because again, recovery is not just about not using the substance. Clearly, that's part of it, but it's also embracing a way of life, in your higher power. Sobriety is a lifestyle.
Yes.
And doing the next right thing is part of our message of hope.
Yes. And again, it's a message of hope when people start finding their way. I work for Showers of Blessings. It's a non-profit, and we have showers for the homeless once a week in Carlsbad. And you meet also, I mean, you become friends with these people, right? And you see how the homeless, and it's also, and I'm making an analogy because a lot of them are addicted. A lot of them have mental illness because that's why they're in the streets. But it's also the invisible people. So people don't see, if you're homeless, you're not seen because people are afraid. Again, it's about fear. So if we can get that over that fear and once you can give people some dignity and some hope, wow, you can
feel human again.
Yes, and then you can encourage them and support that growth and see how powerful they are and how beautiful they are and they can make a difference. We can all make a difference in society.
Well, and what our foundation is trying to do is to give people that support that they wouldn't otherwise have, because again, and it's like it or not, it's the reality of insurance. Okay, the system just doesn't provide for that, and that's what we're trying to do, is to give those tools, okay, so that people then have something to live for and feel human again, and then get back in the, that's again so much my message. You can get Brandon and Dino's thoughts, but it's like I say, get back in the game and get on with life. Doesn't mean you don't have to monitor recovery. You do. It's still a long-term manageable condition, but then get back in the game and get on with life.
Yes. So what are your thoughts, Brandon, about getting back into the game?
No, I think Kevin's exactly right. And one of the things that I notice, I can't say that it's wrong every time, all the time, but I see a focus so much on what we can't do, like what I can't do. I can't do drugs. I can't drink. And that's true. I can't do that. But the truth is, what do I focus on? What do I want to do? And that's my focus with helping people with their career or career counseling or resume, all of that stuff. It all goes back to who am I and what do I have a passion for and what do I want to do? Because the truth is, if I have a goal of, say, let's opening a business, a car wash business, and I want to go mobile and set up shop and take a trailer around and wash cars, doing drugs is going to get in the way of that. Drinking is going to get in the way of that. And it's not going to help me accomplish my goal. So if I focus on that things that I love to do and that are my passion, right, the other things just tend to fall away anyway. And yeah, we have those behaviors that as we get back out there, right, and we get on with life, those behaviors from before rehab that tend to stick with us. Yeah, that's what recovery is about. And going to meetings or whatever your recovery plan is, it is based around getting rid of those old habits, putting new ones in place, and focusing on the things that you love that are going to make you happy. Because socialization, the opposite of substance use disorder, it isn't being clean, it's socialization and being supported and being a part of a community, as we've seen a lot of times in studies. So for me, that's what it's all about. It's what do you love? What do we focus on doing? Okay, yeah, let's mitigate those behaviors that were poor from before, find a way to get rid of them, but focused entirely on the things that are special to us and the ones that we love. So maybe I was
love that. I love that. So Dino, what do you think?
I think they're both absolutely right. And I'm just like, I'm beaming here because I'm listening to some great stories. Look, just yesterday, right? Yesterday, I went and met family for dinner, and it was a tequila cantina and whatever they call it. There's a bar and a restaurant, whatever. So they're going around and giving everybody, what's your order? What kind of drink do you want? It doesn't bother me at all that everybody's ordering a wine or, whatever they're doing. And the gal came to me and said, well, what do you want to drink? We have this. I said, no, I don't drink. Do you have any unsweetened iced tea? And, I thought about that. It doesn't seem like much, but it was really one of the first times. And I've been, clean and sober for 2 years, right? It's really been one of the first times that I didn't have to explain my life story. Like, well, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I mean, I know that's important, but it should be most important to you. I mean, if you're doing it, that's cool. If somebody else is recovering and they want to talk about it, that's cool. But you don't have to let everybody know, like, hey, I've lowered my cholesterol. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's something in yourself that you got to make yourself proud. You got to make yourself proud first. And so I don't feel like I have to explain to everybody my entire life story unless they want to know. And so just saying I don't drink is good enough. You know, nobody's going to say why. If they do say why, I'll tell them. Here's the thing. It's come a time now that if you had a room of people, say 100 people, and you're doing a lecture, and you asked out to the entire room, you know, how many in here know of somebody who is or was addicted, friends or family addicted? Most of the hands go up.
Yeah.
This is not like an isolated little problem that only happens in the bad sides of town. This happens from, you know, everywhere, every walk of life. And more shameful to the ones, I think, that, you know, the people in your life, they don't expect it. I mean, for me, it was really embarrassing. And for me, I don't know, I can't speak for Kevin and Brandon, but I'm sure we can ask them. But for me, when I got out, I made a conscious effort not to try to prove myself to people. I thought it was more important for me to, you know, speak silently and, you know, carry a big stick. In other words, lead by example. Actions, you know, obviously speak louder than words. So when you tell people, hey, I'm clean. Hey, I got out. I feel great. I'm clean. You know, that's good, but that's only words, right? What are you doing with your life on a regular basis, religiously? You know what I mean? How are you improving? And you'll find that if you're truly doing all the right things and backing up your words, then people start coming back into your life. And the wonderful, magical thing about people coming back into your life, you're kind of like your own filter. You pick and choose who you want back into your life.
Right.
Very selective. And it's really cool. It's great power that I think a lot of addicts out there don't understand that they have, right? Instead of giving it all away, you had it all along. Now you're a powerful person. You're a sober person. You think clear. Your mind is fresh. You're free. And so it's almost like starting a whole new world. And you're very selective of the people in your world. And that's a good thing.
Yes, very good thing. So Brandon, did you find freedom? Like, because obviously without saying anything, Dino was saying he found freedom, he found power, freedom. What about you when you got out?
Yeah, there was so much of that. A lot of expectation. I felt the expectation from others. And like Dino said, I wasn't about to run around and shout from the rooftops that, you know, I'm clean and watch me be clean. Like, I knew that this was a tough thing. You know, it's not this, you know, perfect smooth road for everybody. And it definitely wasn't for me. There were are ups and downs and trials. And you kind of want to be understated because you want to experience those yourself. Like you only want to go through those with the people that you know care about you, because I know Kevin and I have talked about this a bunch, isn't it? This is the time when you find out who the real people that support you in your life are, right? And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, right? Because all these people that say they care about me and love me, and now I've gone to rehab, like I get to find out who's really in my corner. And that at my age, like I'm about to be 40. Like I need to know who those people are, because things are changing, right? But the freedom piece of it there, for me, it was a lot more drastic than I think it is for a lot of people, because I left the bank. I left what was expected of me. I decided I was going to do things for myself. I went from being a really masculine guy who did masculine things to a guy that went to yoga every morning, right? Yeah, I still hit the gym, but I was free to be myself, because I already had like that scarlet A, like Dino talked about, on me. So what else can you do to me, right? Like, you got nothing on me, dude. So right. I'm going to do the things that I care about with the people I care about, and be the person that maybe I get to find out who I am at that point. That was the biggest piece of it. So.
Oh, I love that, really. And what about you, Kevin? How did you feel when you got out of rehab, and did you find freedom?
I did. For one, your mind is so much clearer.
I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but it really is true. The clouds and the sea parts, the clouds move away, and you see a new world. So the freedom I found kind of became like a snowball effect. The better I felt, the better I carried myself. And then people reacted well to that. And then that gave me the confidence. And also, we call it living amends. Sometimes you have to make direct amends to someone for specific things you've done. But one of the most satisfying feelings for me, perhaps only second to helping somebody get back on their feet professionally, is repaying those people that believed in me and saying to them, see, I'm back in the game. Because as my mom said, and again, my family, I've been on both sides of this. Okay, I've been both the family member and then the addict. They have their own recovery. Okay, just as we're getting back, we're feeling better. They have taken their own trip, and I'm going to be real, because just as I can be light, they've been to hell and back. I mean, when you've had a family with a serious addiction issue, and my mother would like to get on a podcast of some form at some kind to talk about her experience as the mother's, well, not necessarily this one, but some, to share her message as an 80-year-old who's walked this road twice in her life. The family member side, because that's what it is. There's the perspective of the family and the close friends, and then the perspective of the addict. And what we're trying to do is marry them into one. Okay. And through dialogue, and that's what it is. It's listening to each side, if you want to call it a side. But what gave me the most freedom was that incremental every day doing a little bit better, and then seeing it all come together and coalesce into a beautiful picture. And we're now trying to share reprints of that picture with other people.
I love that. Wow, this has been a wonderful 1 hour. It's already over. Where do you go from here? So this foundation is new, obviously, right? It's new. It's starting. It's such an exciting initiative. I don't know what else to say. Where to from here? So, okay, let's go with Kevin, because obviously, Kevin, it's the Hyer Calling Foundation, right? So let's start with you.
Well, my best hope, and Dino and Brandon are equally partners in this too, is that when we share these stories, okay, we can get kind of like a kitchen table effect, like I'm trying to do right now. Like, tone down some of the rhetoric, tone down some of the judgment, and just have an honest conversation with a little tasteful humor. Okay, nice people from the suburbs can have this issue also. Let's talk about it. Okay, answer questions appropriately, listen back and forth, have a dialogue. Okay, and then break down those barriers. And again, I draw an analogy, not a perfect one, but it's an analogy to the gay rights movement. So we're just like you. And then as people who have the means and as they can, if they are willing to maybe share a few dollars to help us help those who don't have the means to get their lives back together. And then everyone benefits. Okay, society benefits when people get their lives in order. And the reality is, it's not a knock at the insurance industry. It's just the world we live in. It's not set up to help people unless they relapse. Well, that's not what they need. What they need is something to live for. And obviously, unless you're independently wealthy, that comes from employment. That's why our focus is on this. So for those who have a few dollars that they can chip in, that might be even a way to think of it, chipping in, okay, to help all of us have a better life and a better world. And that comes from people beating addiction. And with that, I will pass to my partners, even if it's in my name, Brandon and Dino.
Thank you, Kevin. That was beautiful. Brandon, what about you?
I think that's an awesome question. What are we doing from here? And there's been a lot of work to this point, Carina. I'm gonna be honest. Kevin and Dino have been awesome partners, and I'm so grateful for them. They are both do their own things respectively. Dino is as the gift of gab, and he can talk to anybody and smooth with the best of them. I love it. And Kevin does that awesome as well, and really is a great leader. My role, as I see it in this, is been to make this function from the inside. So we have so much interest in people that want to help or volunteer, or people that want to be a part of our network of second chance employers. My job and what I do well is making that function, right? So I put those processes together, the databases and how they work and those applications, and develop that network. So that's my goal. I love talking individually about this stuff with one-on-one. This may not be like one-on-one, but it feels that way, right? So I love things like this. And I'm happy to talk in front of whoever. But the individual conversations for me mean the most. And then developing those processes that are going to make us win in the end, because the attention to detail is where success comes. So.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, I can see this. This can blow up because it's such a needed. It's really needed within the society for everything. So, thank you, Dino. What about you?
What about me? Well, this is important to remember. These programs are kind of customized. It's not a one size fits all. And that's why this is just really awesome. I mean, again, filling voids that don't exist in the marketplace, like Kevin mentioned. I mean, it's the unfortunate truth about the insurance. I will say that today, as we're recording this podcast, we have been picked up by 50 separate publications around the country.
That is so cool.
Yeah, there are people that want help. There are people that want to contribute. They want to volunteer. They want to donate. There are employers that want to be part of this. And that's what it's about. It's just creating these huge networks so that we can help millions, literally millions around the world. I told you this a long time ago, and now it's happening. And the great thing is on this podcast in real time.
Yes.
So I think it's pretty cool.
It's very cool. It's very cool. I love it. I love it. And I love that it's the three of you are just so perfect together. You like this puzzle, and everyone has their own their own nuance.
We all
Very
have
cool.
a gift to bring to the table,
Yes,
and we complement
yes.
each other.
Yes, yes.
That's how-
So you can see the vision exploding, which is also very exciting. It'll be interesting to chat again in about a month and see how far this has gone.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about, Kevin, you mentioned donations.
Yes, if you go to our website, we appreciate anything anyone can spare. And if you don't have means financially to donate, we certainly can have people donate in their time. Okay. I mean, this is an all hands on board effort, and that's how I see it. It is, we're all in this together. Okay.
Yes,
Whether
yes.
you've walked this road yourself, whether addiction touched somebody in your life as a friend or family member, or even if they haven't, you're just a good human being that wants to help. Okay. We always have needs. If you go to our website, clearly, if you're willing to make a donation, we appreciate it. We're 501c3. It's fully tax deductible. But if that's not something you're in a position to do, there's a lot of stuff we can do in terms of just your time. One thing we want to do is help people rebuild networks. So let's suppose you live in Memphis, Tennessee, and you happen to work in a certain industry, and you're willing to basically be a resource for someone in your community. Okay. Obviously, this would be vetted appropriately. There's some mechanisms in place, but you might be introduced to somebody who's trying to rebuild their network, or maybe have you look at their resume, just working in their industry or something, or just be somebody who might be a set of ears as they get their career back on track. Those are the kinds of ways you can help out on our campaign. Even if you're not at the moment in a position to donate financially, you can donate with your time too.
I love that. Thank you.
It really isn't all hands on. Yeah.
Carina, can you say kaboom? This thing's exploding. This thing's
That's what I'm saying. Kaboom.
big.
Yes, it's going to
Bam.
be huge.
How's that? Huh? There you
I love
go.
it. I love it because it's such a needed process. And the exciting part is that to watch how it infiltrates and how everybody's lifted from it. Like the rising tide, right? And the boats. Beautiful. Brendan, what are your last thoughts?
Last thoughts is it's again, like Dino and Kevin said, I'm excited because this has already been exciting to see the culmination of all the work that we've already put in and laying the foundation. But to see what happens with these guys, because they're two awesome people, and how we can take all this focus and turn it into helping others. Those are what my thoughts are always about, and how we can help that one individual who just needs it more than anyone else. And that's how we feel towards everybody that we're able to help out. So those are my thoughts. Thank you so much for the conversation today, guys, and Carina. And I always enjoy these things and look forward to doing in the future, hopefully.
Yes. Thank you. Dino, what about your last thoughts?
I'm just happy to ride this wave. It's just great. This is purpose, definitely purpose, Carina. This is a calling. This is a mission.
Yes.
Yes. And I see this thing getting bigger like exponentially bigger really, really soon. No cost programs. This doesn't cost the people we select to help. It doesn't cost them anything. And that's the great part about it. Whether they're insured, uninsured, their insurance doesn't cover it. That is not important. The important thing is to get people back working, contributing, being happy with themselves, self-love, like we've talked about so many times, and obviously we'll continue to talk about it. But Carina, this was a good one. It
was. Thank you so much. This was really great, and I'm really honored to be part of this as this podcast. It's really exciting, and I'm excited to see what happens. So let's revisit this in a month, I think, right? That should be pretty cool. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Kevin. Been an honor and pleasure to meet you. And of course, thank you, Dino.
Thank you for walking on the journey with us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye.